know nothing of such long-established contact with visitors from other worlds. Let me reiterate, long-established contact. But worse still, the greatest democracy in the world, the country with the greatest people. Let me tell you, I love Americans. The greatest democracy in the world as we know it, the House of Representatives and the Senate, the congresswomen, the congressmen, the senators, the elected representatives of the most powerful nation in our world are virtually all in ignorance of Majestic's established contact with visitors from other worlds. Because they do not know, they have not been told, cynically bypassed. So successful has the cover-up been by this organisation that for the past 40 years or more, virtually every member of the Congress and the Senate and my Parliament has been ignorant of the fact we have established extraterrestrial contact, that we've been having a continued dialogue for the last 40 years or more. Even as I speak, the elected representatives of the greatest nation in the world are deliberately being kept out of the loop. This, I must repeat, is morally repugnant to me. That I, as the merest of any elected citizen, know what is going on, and they do not, is simply unacceptable. While I do believe the programme of protecting mankind from the news that we are not alone has been exemplary, this until it was deemed we are ready for such news. It is obvious to me there will be no panic now, for we are a very different generation than 50 years ago. But I must state categorically here and now, I believe your timetable to be fatally flawed. Indeed, it is very clear to me the scant regard you have shown to the elected representatives of the greatest nation on earth, let alone my parliamentarians, that the time has come that I must speak as a law-abiding citizen and now elected councillor for the Liberal Democrats in St John and All Saints Ward in Winchester, that I must speak on behalf of my elected colleagues in the United States and the United Kingdom. This because the elected members of the greatest democracy in the world and my Parliament simply are not in the know. They have not been informed by Majestic, now US Space Command. The satellite government established for the biggest undertaking in the world's history, America and Britain's relationship with extraterrestrials. Indeed, the Senate, the Congress and the Parliament have been treated as if they were a mere parish council by this organisation. We now have a democracy where virtually all its elected members are unaware of the era we are in. Its very dealing and decision-making with other nations in our world in real time and their peoples is flawed. This is a very dangerous time and a dangerous situation for mankind. Already, the transition into a new era is not going well. Such is the state of our democracy. Indeed, how we deal with one another at this time in our history is crucial to my convictions of why I am speaking today. To all members of US Space Command and its organisation, whether you are civilian, military or scientific, I want to say how much I respect you, the challenges you must have faced and still face, the decisions you will have had to take as we in our infancy have finally emerged into a new era. Indeed, as we look back at our modern world today, because of your success in back engineering items from crashed alien craft, that we have fibre optics, silicon chips, lasers and particle beams, etc. The very world we live in has literally been transformed in the last 50 years. This mainly down to your guidance. Colonel Corso has a lot to answer for in a lot of this success. Indeed, the new industrial revolution of nanotechnology has Majestic written all over it. The dangers your members will have faced during these initial years probably beggars belief, for clearly the community we are emerging into, some are benevolent and some are not. But this is your territory, and for you to explain. It is not for me to steal your thunder. The very notion that an ordinary law-abiding citizen, now elected City Councillor for St John and All Saints Ward of Winchester, may speak on behalf of the elected parliamentarians of the United Kingdom is nothing short of miraculous. But this is exactly what I am doing now. I am extremely honoured and privileged. The responsibility of such an action has not gone unnoticed by myself. Should the elected members of Parliament wish to hold me to task for this action, I am accountable, full stop. But I, Adrian Hicks, am speaking on your behalf, for it is my belief certain knowledge has been deliberately withheld from the oldest democracy in the world. more importantly, from virtually all its elected members. It is this reason alone why I have stood and been elected as a Liberal Democrat, that I might speak on behalf of my elected colleagues. For the unelected part of the satellite government has not informed the elected representatives of the legitimate government of what is going on. Fact, not fiction. But I must reiterate, I speak to all in this organisation with the greatest of respect and humility. The very stance your organisation finds itself in is at first glance very complex, but to me on the outside it is extremely simple. I shall sum up the current situation. The elected representatives of the greatest nation on earth and the elected representatives of the United Kingdom have virtually all been deliberately kept out of the loop regarding our nation's dealings with extraterrestrials. So successful has the cover-up been, virtually no one elected is in the know. The unelected leaders of this organisation have deliberately kept the elected representatives on both sides of the Atlantic from getting into the picture. Indeed, this speech may come as a total surprise to many of our elected representatives in both our nations. But when an ordinary citizen, now elected city councillor, knows more than virtually all the elected representatives of the greatest nation on earth, including those of my nation, and has seen the visitors with my own eyes for over 10 minutes, common sense tells you the timetable is fatally flawed. When a base commander somewhere has a sense of humour and allows one of our visitors out on a jolly on a busy Saturday for a stroll up the high street in the early afternoon in the spring of 2004, I should like to state too that I have a sense of humour. My humour is such that I joined a political party. I went through a strenuous selection process to be able to stand as a candidate for the Liberal Democrats. I have fought 2 elections. The first I lost by 27 votes in 2006, the second I won in 2007. This to be able to speak on my elected colleagues' behalf. Indeed, this is no knee-jerk reaction, for I have deliberately allowed time to pass. Indeed, the question I as a Liberal Democrat wish to ask you is this, a question which I am sure all the elected representatives who are not in low would want me to ask first. Are you for democracy or are you against democracy? For depending on your answer or your silence, the next 100 years of our future will depend. My father's generation will be watching this with eagle eyes. What do you think the men who died on Amber Beach would think about the situation where the truth was being kept from the very elected representatives that the people, very people of our great nations have voted in office, and this by the unelected? Yet, your timetable does not include this, the most important first step in any program of informing our world, that of formally informing the elected representatives of your own nation and mine about your nation's involvement with extraterrestrials. This is why I'm here and speaking now. I find it truly incredulous that in our year 2009, the unelected organisation started by President Nixon, started by President Truman, then in the President Nixon era was formed into a satellite government outside the control of Washington, D.C., purely to interface with our visitors, now part of Space Command, has not interfaced with its own elected representatives, the senators, the congressmen, and the men in my parliamentarians. Ladies and gentlemen of this organisation, after 50 years of running parallel to every elected administration, I must point out that I, as an ordinary citizen, will not know or can guess the projected timetable you will be following, but I am going to tell you why I believe your timetable is fatally flawed. So far, you as an organisation